Well, welcome to Untwist My Soul. It's been a little while since we've done one of these podcasts, and we're gonna try to do one a month. And so here's today's. I'm Pastor Marty Williams. This is Mr. Matt Olin.
Hello.
Hello. So today, what we're going to talk about is whether or not trust is given or earned. So this past Sunday, which happened to be the first Sunday in November 2019, towards the end of the sermon, or maybe the end of the sermon, the way that I wrapped up this whole idea about trust was I put on the table this thought that trust is something that is given, not earned. And that a lot of times what we do is that we wait to trust God until He's earned it. And as long as God's behaving correctly, then we're okay with placing our trust in God. But trust is something that we have to give, and it's not something, trust is something that's earned and not given. Well, I didn't get pushback, but I got a lot of questions Sunday.
There are a lot of people. I talked with just a guy this morning about. He's like, that was what we talked about in small group. That's been buzzing. So
yeah, I had several people after each service talk about it. I had breakfast this morning with someone who said their community group on Tuesday. That was the whole conversation. Was this whole idea about trust? So obviously it's a hot button. It's a hot button to hear that trust is earned instead of given. And so when you say something like, well, trust is something that I give, it's not something that I earn, it causes people to push back at that. Do you have any thoughts on why you think people react to that so quickly?
Well, I think and it's weird because they believe it one way. I think, like, I want somebody to just trust me. I want people to give me trust. But for everyone else, they have to earn my trust. So why would that apply one way and not the other? I think is a big one. And certainly the gut punch that I felt on Sunday too is when you said we expect that of God as well. We want Him to earn our trust, and that was just I do that because it's instinctual, because that's how we operate here. We want to try to protect ourselves. We're looking out for our own self-preservation, our own glorification. And so we want to be trusted by everybody else. When are you going to trust me again? When is she going to get off my back? When is she going to trust me? When is so-and-so going to trust me? Why don't they trust me with this? But at the same time, I'm watching my back because I just don't trust anyone because nobody's earned my trust.
Yeah.
And
I think that we just assume that trust is earned, because everything in life that's of any worth anything is earned. We earn a salary, we earn grades, we earn a promotion, you earn a starting role on the team. I mean, all of these things are earned.
We started even in our kids' classes. Hey, good behavior, you earn a gold star.
You're going to earn a gold star, or you earn a snow cone.
Yep,
right?
You earn a snow cone.
Because of that. So I think it's really easy for us to think that trust is something that we earn, but I think it's hard to find, at least the people that I'm reading that study human behavior and I don't read anybody that says that trust is something that's earned. Is that it is given. Mm-hmm. And my immediate example that I used with a couple after church Sunday was, well, I just don't understand how trust is given. It has to be earned. And I said, well, have you ever driven on a 2-lane road? Like, have you ever driven fast down a 2-lane road? Like you're going 65, 75 miles an hour, going west, and then there's people in the other lane coming at the same speed going east, and you're able to do that because you trust that they'll stay in their lane.
Given them trust.
You've never met them. You don't know them. You don't know what their driving record is. You don't even know if they're drunk or not. Mm-hmm. But you're simply trusting that. Every time we go into a restaurant and we eat food that is given to us by somebody who's prepared it that we didn't know, why do we? That's we're giving that trust. Mm-hmm. And then to top it off, we give them a credit card. They give them our credit card and they walk away with it. It's like, where else do we do that? Now, the reason that I think that we would trust the driving illustration is that for most of us, even though we know what happens, may even know somebody that's happened. For most of us, we've never been in a head-on collision. We have eaten at a restaurant literally thousands of times in our life, and nobody's stolen our identity from it, and we haven't gotten food poisoned. There's reasons why that was so that's kind of been earned. For me, I think trust is something that we choose to do.
Well, and even to go back, so you just gave the example of, well, we've had plenty of experiences from all of these other places. Well, all of these other drivers have not abused my trust, and so I can trust these other drivers that I'm going to, this restaurant gave me the food and it didn't make me sick and they didn't take my credit card information, so I'm going to trust these other restaurants. But I think in a lot of the same ways, when somebody abuses that mistrust, we do apply it to other people as well. So and so abused my trust, and so I'm not gonna trust this other person.
That is so true. I mean, you have a bad experience with one person in a church, and then all of a sudden you can't trust the church. Or you had a bad experience at a church, and now you're gonna not trust churches in general. Or maybe you had a bad experience where you couldn't trust your father. And now you've come to the conclusion as an adult that all fathers are bad or all men are bad because they're not trustworthy. So let's talk about the word trustworthy. When you and I were chatting on Monday, we talked about this idea of being focused on, it can be easy to be focused on, do I trust? Is trust earned or is it given? Where does trustworthy, my own self, where my own trustworthy, what should I be doing with that?
I think it starts, and this came up, I remember seeing, and I don't know how old the TED Talk was, but it was from a woman, Honora O'Neill, I think is her name, and she was talking about how we want to be trusted. Well, I want to be trusted, or I want to trust other people, and we shouldn't focus on that as much as we should focus on trustworthiness, our own and others. But it does go back into, what role am I playing? Am I worried? Am I worried about somebody else's reaction to me, instead of me just doing what I should do to build trustworthiness, to be somebody that's accountable, that's dependable, to whatever it is that I want people to trust me with. If I can just prove that I'm trustworthy in that, that's my responsibility. That's my role.
Is that you trying to earn trust, or is that trying to say, hey, I'm living in such a way that you can give me your trust?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Yeah, not trying to earn it, but just this is how I want it to be, period. Whether or not you trust me is not my responsibility, nor is it my role. Yeah. That's not for me to do. Your trust in me is not my responsibility. I have no control over that. But I do have control over my trustworthiness. And whether or not I earn that from you is out of my hands. But I can do what I need to do.
I wonder if there's a correlation between how trustworthy you think that you are and how trusting you are. Because I had written this in the notes for Sunday, and I didn't teach it in any of the three services, but I had written down that the more insecure you are, the more likely you will not trust. It's hard for an insecure person to give trust. And a secure person has a secure person has a much easier time giving trust to people.
In the period of my life where I would unfortunately admit that I was very not trustworthy. I was incredibly skeptical, untrusting of everyone. Everyone was out to get me. Nobody could be trusted. But it was mainly because I knew what I was doing. I knew I wasn't
almost makes you
trustworthy.
paranoid.
That's exactly what it was. I was extremely paranoid.
I think there's another. So there's my own behavior, my own following out of how being a trustworthy person, and the because we know ourselves more than we know anybody. So we know it's really hard to lie to yourself. Although we do it on occasion, right? It's called justification. I'm justifying what I'm doing, basically just lying to myself. I think another role that comes in, okay, I'm not very trustworthy, so I'm not going to trust other people. I think another big piece that comes in here is the more wounded you are. If you've got a deep wound in life, that becomes very hard to trust people. So you may be an upstanding person, and you may be very trustworthy and very dedicated, and people can count on you, but you have got this wound that has happened when you were a child or when you're a teenager or whenever, and because of that hurt, that's keeping you from trusting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that debilitates relationships, marriages, friendships, where the other person can be incredibly trustworthy. Like they've given you their trust, and they've proven to be trustworthy. But because of this one wound in you, and you can love this person intensely, but because of this one wound, I cannot give you my trust. You've done nothing wrong, but because of this, and until I've dealt with this, this can only go so far. This relationship, this marriage, whatever it is, can only go so far because I have not dealt with this one wound that's preventing everything.
And we kind of talk about wounds a lot around Anthem Community Church. In just a real brief way, if you've come to the place where you realize that you've got a deep wounding in your life, and it's keeping you from giving trust. I still think whoever you trust is because you've chosen to trust them. Because ultimately, I don't know if anybody can earn it. So if I'm choosing to trust you, and I'm having a hard problem doing that because of my own wound or pain, what's the best way of going about healing that? Or who can heal that?
One, I think is, first step is admitting that you have a wound. So many of us, as a defense mechanism, the way we can operate, the way we're going to protect ourselves is just to flat out not admit that we even have a wound, and we can just go through life like that. So to, one, admit that we have a wound, two, be willing, and we that can vary depending on what that wound is, but be willing to kind of dig the bullet out. So many of us would rather just not admit that the bullet's in there or just let it heal over. But really, we gotta, in order for it to heal, you gotta dig the bullet out. In that's going to be facing it. That may be facing the person that caused the wound. It may be admitting your role in that wound. It may be admitting that maybe you had a part to play in that. Most likely you did. Something in there. And so that's painful. Digging out a bullet's going to be painful, and so we don't want to deal with that. We'd rather just continue not trusting, or whatever it is that's breeding that's starting with that wound. We'd rather just continue operating on that instead of dealing with more pain to deal with the healing.
Yeah, and then learning how to invite Jesus into that healing, because ultimately He's the only one that's going to be able to heal us, and He is the great healer. But we have to get to the point where, like you said, we got to admit it. We got to be able to do the hard work, and then we got to invite Him into it. And then really have to ask ourselves, do I really want to be healed? Because a lot of people don't. Well,
and you brought up the great thing on Sunday, talking about the arrogance of, well, this wound, this pain. I'm going to admit it. I'm going to get to the point where, yes, I admit I have a wound, where I admit I've done some things. I've caused wounds. But it's too far. God cannot heal me. So we've made the gap. We've bridged the gap of saying, yes, there is something there, but it's unfixable. It's beyond God's reach. And how arrogant, how simultaneously, I think, pathetic and arrogant that is.
Yeah, don't you think all arrogant people are kind of pathetic?
It is.
I think arrogance is not a trait that I don't think anybody is looking for. It's like, what are you looking for in a friend? Well, I'm really looking for someone who's really arrogant. What are you looking for in a spouse? So I'm hoping to date someone who's just incredibly arrogant. Yeah. It's not an appealing thing.
That sounds wonderful, and I think it comes across when we say that, when we say stuff like that, it sounds to us, go back to the line to ourselves, it sounds like we're being humble. It sounds like we're just being real transparent, just being real honest. No, I'm not sugarcoating it. I am a monster, and God cannot fix me. And again, how, one, incorrect, two, how pathetic, and three, how arrogant that is. If you were to ask somebody, well, do you think God can heal everything? Well, yeah. Okay, well, can God heal you? Oh, well, no, not me. So although you may feel like you're putting yourself in a pit, like, oh, no, I'm just so lowly, I'm so disgusting. In actuality, you're putting yourself on a pedestal. You're putting yourself above God. God cannot reach me. I am above God's reach.
Yeah, I think a lot of people wear that as I'm not a very trusting person. It's hard to earn my trust. They even say, nobody says it's hard for me to give you my trust, but it's hard for you to earn my trust. I think they wear it like a badge, like they're proud of it. It's like when really, I'm not sure I would wear that as a badge. So trust given versus trust earned. And Sunday, what I was speaking of was, as we're talking and working our way through the book of Galatians, and talking about how we've got to fight this whole idea that I have to earn my salvation, that I have to earn God's love, I have to earn His blessing, that we don't earn any of that. That is given to us. That is what He offers us as grace, as a gift. And if we're not careful, we'll fall into that trap of legalism. That I grew up in an independent Baptist, really strict, very legalistic religion, and you have grown up in one equally like that. It just has a different name.
We have protocol.
You have protocol. Yeah, yours is a lot fancier, and ours wasn't so fancy, but it was the same. It was the same thing. So this idea of trust, I am going to. I have to give my trust to God. Because would you put trust and faith as the same thing?
I would have, and I cannot remember it, but I heard a podcast that said they were not the same thing, and I can't remember how or why. But I was talking to someone earlier as to why we have this problem, and we talked about it a little earlier, talking about, well, everything that we've grown up to understand about how this world operates is you earn this. So why wouldn't trust be earned? Why wouldn't grace be earned? Why wouldn't any of this be earned? Because that's how this world operates.
Why wouldn't my salvation be earned?
Why wouldn't everything else is earned? So why wouldn't this? And I heard a pastor over the summer talk about the kingdom of God and how the kingdom of God turns everything on its head. When we read it, the weak will be strong, the poor will be rich. Like, everything is completely opposite.
The first shall be last.
First shall be last. It's Wizard of Oz, and it's just completely nuts. But we keep our focus narrowed on the here and now, and we say, well, God, that sounds great. I trust you, whatever that feels like. I trust you that that's going to happen later, but that doesn't apply to me now. So if you're not going to play by the rules now, I'm going to handle things myself, and I'm going to try to earn things here and now. And then when I get to Candyland, we'll deal with that later. But when we can step back, and you brought up the point, like when you step back and you're like, my dad owns the universe, created the universe, when we can live in that awareness, that truth, that's not even a perspective or an opinion, that's truth. When we can live in that, then those crazy upside down laws can apply, and we can be easier to trust here. But if we keep it focused to, now this is what I'm dealing with, and God's not playing by the rules here. I prayed, I said, God, I want you to do this, and God didn't deliver, so now God does not get my trust when it comes to this. I trust Him with eternity, but with what's going on here now.
I don't trust Him right now. I have faith in heaven.
I have faith
in
heaven.
Faith in eternity, but I don't trust in this moment. Now that's good. I mean, we only have how we communicate primarily is words, and so we use the words, and we are constantly defining words, redefining words, and how you define trust may be different from how I define it, and same thing with faith. I tend to put trust and faith in the same. If they're not the same, then they're really close to each other. It's like, I'm not going to argue with you if you say, no, Marty, you didn't have faith that stool would hold you up. You trusted that it would hold you up. I say, oh, okay, whatever. Or the other way around, from that standpoint. So I think that is So as we were looking in Galatians, and we're looking at this idea is that I can't earn my salvation, I can't earn God's blessing, I can't earn His love. That has actually been earned. It was earned through Christ, and He earned it, and then took on the punishment of our sin. So in that way, it has been. That's what redeemed means. It's the price has been paid, and so we've been redeemed. So since that has happened, and that's the context of what we're talking about. So when I'm talking about Sunday, when we close out the sermon, I'm talking about trust is given, it's not earned. That's in our relationship with God. I give my trust to God. God's not going to earn it. So I'm going to give my trust, my faith in that. We immediately jump to relationships, between each other. We immediately jump to a spouse relationship, a friendship relationship, or whatever. Which brings in the whole idea is trusting another human being, even something that we're supposed to do. I'm supposed to trust God. I'm supposed to have faith in God. And so what I did today, I went in and I was just kind of looking, okay, so what does the Scriptures say about trusting human beings, about trusting other people, whether it's a spouse, a child, whatever. And I don't think it would be shocking for me to tell you or to remind you or to remind us that there is not a single verse in all of the Scripture that even hints that we're supposed to trust another human being.
I was going to say that none of that's ringing a bell. So
It's
either,
not ringing a
either
bell.
I'm missing something or it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. We're not supposed to trust people. And so when I say trust is earned, I mean, it's not earned, it's given. I think we immediately go to the physical, and we don't go, just like you're saying, I can maybe trust in what I can't see. I can have faith in what I can't see, but this right now, here and right now, I have a hard time with that. We're not even supposed to trust. And that reminded me of this thing. I've been teaching this for years. I taught it way back in the day when I was a youth pastor. And it's a triangle. You just draw a triangle, and there's 3 points. And what most of us do is if you write on each point, if you write use, love, trust. You put those 3 words on each of the points. Use, love, trust. This is what most of us do. Most of us love things, trust people, and use God. That's what most of us do. Most of us go to God when we only have a problem. We go to God when we have something that needs to be solved, or we just don't know where else to go. Okay, so most people are going to use God, kind of like a genie in the bottle, or a Santa Claus, or a tooth fairy, or a good luck charm, or whatever. I'm going to use God. I'm going to love things. Because people don't nearly get as upset about, you taking their trust away as much as you do as taking their stuff away. And so we love things, and then we trust people. And not really, what Scripture teaches us from start to finish is that I'm supposed to use things. I'm supposed to love people. And I'm supposed to trust God.
Sounds good.
It sounds good, doesn't it?
Sounds good.
It does sound good. So what do we do with people? Okay, I think the first thing that we have to say is Scripture very consistently teaches us that I'm not supposed to trust people. I'm supposed to trust God. However, there has to be some element of trust, faith in people, whether it's going to a restaurant, driving or getting married, or, laying down and going to sleep next to someone, or letting someone stay in your house. All of these different things that go in there. And that reminds me of a great job that Henry Cloud does with Proverbs. And he talks about what we see in Proverbs, and that Proverbs extensively talks about in the Old Testament, talks about 3 kinds of people. He talks about wise people, foolish people, and evil people. And there's all kind of Proverbs for each one of them. And so what are we supposed to do with a wise person? Well, with a wise person, someone who we would say is trustworthy, we're going to be in relationship with them. We're going to give feedback to them. They're going to learn. For me, I'm going to learn from them. We're going to develop a relationship. We are going to have, whatever level of that relationship. That's what you do with a wise person. Well, what do you do with a fool? Proverbs repeatedly talks about what you do with a fool is you give direct commands, you put strict boundaries, because a fool is a fool, and they, using our vernacular, can't be trusted.
Yep.
So here's the boundaries, here's the thing, here's what you do. So with a wise person, you develop the relationship. With a fool, you set boundaries. And then with an evil person, you run. You have nothing to do with. And if need be, you might need to call the police or a lawyer. But that's what you do with evil people. And so I think there's a lot of there's a lot of wisdom in Proverbs as it talks about how my relationships with the people that I'm around. I just shouldn't. Am I going to blindly trust? Am I going to blindly give my trust to everybody that I see? No. I mean, I still lock the doors to my house and occasionally lock the doors to my car. Hint, hint. My car is hardly ever locked. A lot of times the windows are not even up. It's my southern coming out. But I'm just not going to blindly trust people. But I'm not supposed to really trust them at all. I'm supposed to love them. And if you think about it, what is one of the most loving things that you can do for someone? Is to show them
trust.
that I trust you, that I'm not afraid of you, that I think that you have my best interests at heart, that I don't see you as an enemy. I mean, that's one of the most loving things we can do sometimes is to say, you know what, you're not my enemy. And if I can get to that point, loving them. So I think it's, when you hear something like trust is given, it's not earned, it goes against every fiber in our being, because everything in life is earned. And to think that trust is any different, but I really do believe that trust is given. And when you look at it from a scripture standpoint, that the thing that pleases God more than anything is my faith. And I'm placing my faith. I'm going to trust that when God says that I'm redeemed, I'm redeemed. When God says I'm his child, I'm his child. When he says I'm forgiven, I'm forgiven. When he says I'm adopted and I'm sealed with his Spirit, that's who I am. And so I'm going to claim that, and I'm going to place my trust in it. And that's the thing that pleases God more than anything. And if I'll do that, as I'm working on being trustworthy, then I don't have to really worry about all of those other things. But it probably would be a better idea to see people as wise, foolish, or evil.
Well, I think there's even some direction in that too. So in the one TED Talk she was saying, I have people that I would trust, completely with doing my taxes, but I would not trust them to drive a bus. And so you're almost and so it's not we treat it as this blanket thing. Oh, I trust them. Well, with what? Because you can trust people with certain things and not with others.
Yeah.
So even like in dealing with a foolish person, I trust that you're not going to hear me the first time, that you're probably going to do the opposite.
Or that you're going to ignore what I say.
So I'm going to prepare myself, and I'm going to put myself at peace, or I'm going to allow God to give me the peace and the calm of mind when dealing with this foolish person, that I have trusted them with the things that I should trust them with and not things that I shouldn't trust them with. Or I trust that they're probably going to make a mistake, and we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, and I think that's whole nother podcast for a whole nother time, talking about levels of trust and levels of love. And I will trust you to do my taxes, but I don't trust you to fly the plane that I'm about to get on, or vice versa. That is, I'll trust you to sing, but I don't really trust you to teach, or I trust you to teach, but I'm not going to trust you to sing. That's interesting. Any closing thoughts?
Just, that it's hard. Something else we talked about in our small group, one of the reasons, and this kind of goes into grace, but also trust. It's easier for us to not want to receive grace or receive trust from other people, because that means, and you had said it too, with all of this stuff comes certain benefits and certain responsibilities.
Yeah, freedom brings responsibility.
Freedom brings responsibilities, and if I'm free, if I have faith in God, then my trust in others with a base faith in God opens me up to some hurt. Yeah. And I'd rather just go back to the law. I'd rather just, you know what, earning this just makes more sense.
That's right.
And I don't have to do this. You had said, if I follow this, then I don't have to make decisions. I don't have to make choices. This is what it says. I'm just following along. I'm not responsible for any of this. So if I receive grace, then I need to show that to others. If I receive forgiveness, then I need to show that, not because because I've earned it or that's part of the bargain, but that's what should naturally flow from me. And there's people, maybe I want to show grace. Maybe I want to trust this person, but I don't want to trust this person.
Yeah.
And God says, no, there's more to this. And maybe we don't trust everybody the same, but there is some work. There is going to be some vulnerability that you're opening yourself up to.
Isn't it interesting that we often are afraid of the things that we want?
Oh, yeah.
We say we want trust. We say we want love. We say we want healing. We say we want these things, but yet we're so scared of that. Scared of that sometimes. And that's interesting. So as I had breakfast this morning with someone in our church, and we sat down, and he said, "Hey, man, the sermon was the topic of the day when we got together with our group on Tuesday morning, and we were confused, we were asking questions, we had been thinking about it, and I was like, giving him a high five, and I'm like, yeah, that's really what I hope that we have, that we can put stuff out there and have conversations and have sermons and have talks about stuff that just doesn't have pat answers, or just that makes you think. And ultimately, I think that I would close by saying, let's make sure that we trust God. We learn how to trust God, love people, and use things, and not get that off where I'm trying to trust people and love things and use God, because that does not end well.
So we're going to call it Untwist My Triangle?
Untwist My Triangle. Or line up my triangle.
Line up my triangle.
I don't know, maybe line up my triangle. All right, okay, gang. Thanks for watching and/or listening. If this is helpful, the best way to get us, let me just say, we're both green temperaments. If you don't know what that is, then you should check that out. But we're both green temperaments. So the best way to get us to do more podcasts is to let us know you're watching, to let us know that it was helpful or beneficial, or to let us know, hey, could you talk about this? Because we're sitting here talking to an empty room and looking at a camera on a pole, and we have no idea if it's been beneficial. So let us know. Let us know in any way that you can, and if we find that it's beneficial, then we'll do our best to do it more often. All right, thanks. Hope to see you at church this Sunday. And if you're not around Henderson, Nevada, I hope you go to church somewhere Sunday. See you soon.